So activity number 2 is called the web of infection, and the purpose of this activity involves helping students to identify the spread of germs from person to person and how germs from people can spread out to the point that they become an epidemic, which is when you've infected communities and beyond. So everything that we need for this activity includes the lesson plan itself, and within the package there is also a list of scenarios that say scenarios for the web of infection activity. And then the last piece is an overhead, which comes in solid form in the binder, and you can photocopy onto a piece of overhead material, and a pen for that use. So what you want to do is ask your students for the name of a celebrity or famous character who's going to come to visit the class today. You don't want to use a student as the celebrity, because the celebrity themselves are the ones that are sick and not using good infection control practices. So they're the ones that are spreading the germs, and we don't want the rest of the class to target one student. In my travels, the most popular person right now is Hannah Montana. So for the purposes of this, we're going to pretend that Hannah Montana has come to class today. Okay. So Hannah Montana has come to our class today, and I'm now going to refer to the scenario and read through it, and we're going to see how many people Hannah has potentially infected through not using good infection control measures. So Hannah Montana has come to our class for the day. Unfortunately, she's sick with the flu. Now this might be a good opportunity to talk with students about what the flu is, how it is an infection, a chest infection, that can cause other symptoms, and how it's spread by droplets. So coughing and sneezing and wiping our noses and not washing our hands properly. So Hannah is here. Hannah Montana arrives in class and sneezes in her hand, then passes photos of herself out to the class. So then I would have identified 6 students in class who are going to be the people who have direct contact with Hannah. So we're going to pretend that we have someone here named John. So Hannah Montana arrived in class, sneezed in her hand, then passed photos of herself out to the class, including to John. So John has just potentially been infected by Hannah Montana. And the next question is, how many people live in John's house? So I would ask John, how many people live with you at home? And if he said, I have 5 people other than myself, then in the bubble above John's name, I'm going to put 5. So John plus 5 other people makes 6 people total. Okay, scenario number 2. Hannah Montana borrows Jane's pen for the morning to sign autographs for adoring classmates and chews on it before giving it back. So Jane is our second person who's just been potentially infected by Hannah Montana. And of course, my next question would be, how many people live in Jane's house? Now, Jane is from a family where there's a lot of extended family living in her house, so we're going to say that she has 18 people besides herself, which in some communities and some populations is very common. Overcrowding is certainly an issue in certain areas, and so to have 18 people cannot be uncommon in certain communities, which of course means that when you have that many people in one house, sharing washrooms, sharing the kitchen, sharing everything, that the transmission of germs is a little harder to stop. Okay, so scenario number 3. The recess bell rang as Hannah Montana was blowing her nose. She still got to the door first and turned the doorknob to open just as Bill was coming, and he was the next person to touch the doorknob. So Bill is the 3rd person who's potentially been infected. And in Bill's house, there are 8 people besides himself. In phys ed class, all the students were playing a game of soccer. The running made Hannah Montana cough quite a bit, and she turned her head to cough, and as she did, coughed right at Jill before raising her elbow to cough into it. So Jill just got a face full. And in Jill's house, we're going to say that there are 3 people besides herself. So one team scored a point in the soccer game, and Hannah Montana high-fives Steve. Maybe she'll sponsor the team next year. And in Steve's house, we're going to have 7 people besides himself who live there. Now, everyone is really thirsty after the game because, of course, they've done quite a bit of running. So Hannah Montana takes a big drink from the water bottle before passing it on to Amy to have some. So this is the next person who's potentially been infected. And in Amy's house, there's just 2 people besides herself. Now, because it's such a special day with Hannah in the class, pizza's ordered in for lunch. So Colin and Hannah Montana both reach for the pizza at the same time, and Hannah Montana gets there first, pulls the pieces of pizza apart so that the cheese doesn't stick, and takes her piece and passes the next one on to Colin. So he gets the pizza that's just been touched by her hands. And we ask Colin how many people are in his house, and he's from a house with 11. It's the end of the day, and Hannah Montana is getting ready to leave. She poses for pictures with the class. Suzanne is right next to Hannah for the group photo and so Hannah grabs Suzanne's hand and raises it in the air for the big photo finish. And in Suzanne's house, we have 6 people besides herself. So Hannah Montana has left. So what we're left with is one celebrity with the flu who's just potentially infected 8 different people in class. And depending on whether or not those people themselves wash their hands after and use good infection control practices, it's possible for them to take these germs home and spread them to everyone else in the house. So what we would do next is ask a few students to talk about different groups that they're involved with. So we'll take Jill, for example. I would say, now Jill, you have 3 people living at home with you. What other groups are you involved in? So maybe Jill's in dance class with 5 other students. So there's a potential for her not only to take the germs home to infect her family, but if she's not using good germ transmission practices and doing good hand washing and coughing into her elbow rather than into her hands or just into the air, then she might infect her dance class. People might infect sports teams. People that they play with, they can take it home and their parents can get sick and then take the germs to the office or to wherever they work and infect the people there as well. So it shows how from one person being sick, the germs can spread out and spread out and spread out. So what I would get the students to do is to add up the number of people that one person has just potentially infected, and we'll see how many people we could have had through one sick person coming into class. So today we've got 5 and 8 is 23, and 8 is 31, and 3 is 34, and 7 is 41, and 2 is 43, and 11 is 54, and 6 is 60, plus our 8 people who had direct contact. So we have 68 people who have potentially been infected by going to school and bringing germs home to their family. Now the next thing that we look at with this activity is a sheet that comes with the binder called Cover Your Cough. That's just going to look at some very basic infection control measures that students can do to make sure they don't pass on germs. So one of the most important ones, of course, if you're going to cough or sneeze or blow your nose, is to make sure that you're using a tissue if you need to blow your nose, or if you're coughing or sneezing. And if you don't have a tissue available, that rather than coughing into your hands, that you're coughing into your elbow or your sleeve. Because if you cough into your hands and then you don't wash your hands right away, then you've got all these germs living on them, and then the next time you touch your desk, your pen, your doorknob, you're passing the germs on to these surfaces for other people to touch. If you cough into your sleeve or your elbow, you're probably not using your elbow to open a door, so the germs are going to stay there. So it's going to reduce the number of people you can pass germs on to. The second one we talked about, number 3, is making sure you put your used tissue into the wastebasket. So I know that we're all trying to be environmental, but if we've coughed or sneezed or blown our nose into a tissue, we don't want to shove that in our sleeve and save it for next time, because then all of those germs are going to be sitting there waiting. So if we've used a tissue, then we want to make sure it goes into the garbage, not onto the floor, not sitting in your desk or in your pocket, but into a garbage so that it's gone and you use a new one for next time.